Coming to you from beautiful Los Angeles, California. Welcome to Wine Press with Jess, a new show about wine appreciation, as well as other topics related to cultivating tips or insights for having a flourishing life, enhancing relationships, and igniting hope to make the world a better place. Well, one of my lovely Twitter followers, Sue from Massachusetts, writes, "Here's the problem. I have a question. I've not been able to drink wine for years. I'm told it is a probable sulfite allergy or sensitivity. I really don't drink that much anyway, but a glass of wine once in a while would be nice. Any ideas?" Well, Sue, that's a really great question, and many of my followers might be thinking of the same thing. So here's the scenario. You set yourself up for a really romantic evening. You spend the afternoon decorating and setting up the ambiance of your place just right. So romance is in the air. Candles are lit, roses are out, soft music is playing in the background. You have a wonderful meal that you've set out. You uncork a bottle of Pinot Noir that you got on sale at the local market. And at first it tastes okay for an evening, but it starts to go well with the food. And you're kind of proud of yourself that you got such a good deal on the wine. After you start drinking a couple glasses, where you find yourself in a bit of a dilemma. Not tonight. I have a headache. And wine appears to be the chief culprit. So what are some of the common causes for headaches being related to drinking wine, and what can be done about it? What can you do about it? That's the topic for this show today for Wine Press with Jess. So first of all, a disclaimer. I'm not a medical doctor. So be sure to get a full-blown answer with a medical doctor for your particular situation that you're going through. But here are some thoughts from my perspective as both a wine connoisseur as well as having made wine for a number of years. You see, personally, I've been responsible for making wine back in the 1990s that, could be linked with headaches. I used to work with ultra-ripe Zinfandel grapes, and I remember making the wine and having it come out as kind of a fruit bomb type wine, but unfortunately, people who tasted it and drank a lot of the wine talked about getting headaches. So I did a lot of research on the subject of what causes headaches in winemaking, and to make a long story short, I have repented of the Zins. I've changed my way of thinking about how to make wine. So as a commercial winemaker, this is what I think has to do with all the problems related to headaches in relationship to wine. So what are some of those differences? What have I learned that has made a difference? So what I've done is I've created an acrostic to help you to remember this talk and increase the likelihood of having a wonderful romantic evening with that special person in your life.
Yeah, baby. Yeah.
That's right. It's the word yeah. Y is for yeast. Yeast is fundamental in the winemaking process. You can't make wine without yeast. And good yeast can make all the difference in the world for having a great wine. If you have designer yeast in particular, a lot of winemakers like to do that, that particular type of yeast will bring out some really exotic flavors and really make the grapes that come from the vineyard come out with their fullest potential. However, from time to time, there can be bad yeast that get into the fermentation process. When this happens, certain off flavors can result. And in certain cases, some of the things that can happen can be related to toxins getting into the wine. And that, the researchers have found out, can create headaches. So what can be done about that? Well, in the winemaking process, tests can be done. Zebra tests, for example, can be done from the very beginning to determine what's in there from the very start, all the different types of things that could possibly go wrong, and that can really help a lot. Another issue that's related to yeast type problems would be malolactic fermentation. That's called secondary fermentation. Malolactic fermentation is not the same as yeast fermentation. It comes from a bacterial culture, and in winemaking, most often it's put into the wine as a culture is introduced or inoculated that way. However, from time to time, wine can go through a spontaneous malolactic fermentation. And unfortunately, when this happens, some unwanted bacteria that is related can create some toxins which can also be linked to headaches. So what can you do about yeast? What can you do about malolactic fermentation? Well, unfortunately, you really can't do anything as a consumer. You get what you pay for. Time is money. And in a wine business where you're trying to cut corners, you don't have a lot of oversight on what's going on. You like to make that wine as quickly as possible. Get it out. Get it out and get it moving. Well, the next thing that can be associated with wine and headaches that we can get from wine would be the letter E for the extra sulfites that are included in some wines. Now, sulfites are going to be in every wine, but the amount of sulfite will vary according to the type of fermentation that has gone on. For example, if a grape is picked early, the amount of sulfite that is necessary to preserve that wine will be less. And so you can go out into the supermarket from time to time and you can find wines that contain a very minimal amount of sulfite. Unfortunately, I haven't really found those wines really appealing yet, but who knows? Maybe in the future I'll find some. The one thing about extra sulfites that are included in some wines, you can really tell the extra sulfites when you have kind of a burnt match smell. And that's when a winemaker kind of overdid it by accident. You know, they put the sulfite in, they didn't really measure it right, or sometimes they just put it in on purpose just to make sure that that wine can stay for years without having any problems on a shelf. Sulfites in wine can cause headaches. There's no doubt about it. People with asthma, for example, about 5% of the population can struggle with sulfites in wine because of that, and another 1% can struggle with sulfites. Now you might be thinking, well, that's kind of a low percentage overall, and that is kind of the case from what I understand. So here's the thing, if you think that you have a sulfite sensitivity, you may not. What you can do is to give yourself a test. Try to go out to a restaurant at a salad bar. Usually restaurants have about 5 to 10 times the amount of sulfites that are in a bottle of wine. Or if you can't get out to go to a restaurant, get some potato chips, get some lunch meat, eat some dried fruit. Check it out. See if you get a headache, because those contain a lot of sulfites. So what can you do with wine that has sulfite in it? You say you don't get that wine with low sulfites, but you have wine with sulfite in it. Well, what you could do is aerate that sulfite quite a bit. You can shake it up. You can get one of those fancy little aerator things. I have one of those. And I suppose if you're really cheap, you can stick it in a blender and let it volatilize the ester. As long as you drink it fairly soon, you probably won't have a problem doing that. All right. After the letter E is the letter A for astringent elements. Here again, you get what you pay for. A lot of wine that is made in big bulk styles have astringent elements. That's because they press the grapes extra hard to get more volume. They also pick grapes that aren't necessarily ripe. They get the stems, they get the seeds, they get the bitter and astringent elements, and they throw it all together, and off it goes into the fermentation process. Well, they found out through scientific research that studies indicate that these harsh tannins, these underripe harsh tannins, can often be more responsible than a high sulfite content in the causing of headaches. Now, here's the thing. There are some of the toxins that are in wine that are also in other things that you probably wouldn't expect. For example, you can find aged cheese, salami. If you have your wine with the salami and aged cheese, you might notice it because what happens is that you reach a certain threshold where you become more sensitive to that. Now the good news is that certain grape varietals will not have as many of these stringent elements. For example, Pinot Noir, because they have thinner skins and lighter tannins, are less risky for migraine sufferer. Finally, there is the letter H. H stands for H2O, water. See, I think that a lot of people who have headaches, they probably don't drink enough water. The experts say drink 2 glasses of water for every glass that you drink. You see, what happens is that alcohol opens up the blood vessels. So in the sinus area, you get swelling, which can bring a feeling of pressure, which can cause a headache. I also understand that certain people have a problem with enzymes in their system, which doesn't necessarily break down the alcohol as in other people. So it varies from person to person. Once again, I encourage you to go see your doctor to get the final answer. But at least for those of you who like wine and kind of want to know the wine perspective on what causes headaches, there you go. Well, until next time, cheers! And may you celebrate life by enhancing relationships and having hope to make the world a better place. Instrumental music was done by Easy Ruckus, Something in the Wine. And that love song was done by Amanzi from Nigeria, Fine Wine. Such a great love song.